Hello, most welcome to 1562 of the series. We will continue today with Ted Dimon's fantastic book, The Use of the Hands. And we now come to chapter 6. And placing the hands on the student and the means whereby principle. We are almost ready to look at the problem of placing our hands on a student. But before we do this, I want to address one more basic issue in using our hands to teach. Namely, the problem of stopping and applying the means whereby principle to using our hands to teach. In a general way, the procedures we have already looked at should be sufficient for preparing us to place hands on our student in a coordinated way. In our eagerness to get our hands on our students, however, many of us cultivate the harmful habit of narrowing in our arms to make a full contact with the hands. To prevent this, we have to periodically check to make sure this is not happening. The only way to do this is to stop what we are doing and to apply the means whereby principle to the act of placing our hands on our students. Putting hands on a student for an Alexander teacher is a very powerful stimulus to do. Many teachers, when placing hands on a student, have the idea of making a full contact with their hands, which causes them to narrow across the shoulders and to stiffen their arms and wrists. In the initial stages of learning, this tendency is somewhat unavoidable, especially because there is so much else to think about. But many trainees and teachers never become fully aware of this habit, continuing to put their hands on in this harmful way and assuming that their work will improve simply by doing a lot of teaching. But stiffening our arms to put hands on indicates a lack of clarity in one's thinking that needs to be addressed directly. When a student is sitting or standing in front of us and we want to put hands on them, this is a stimulus, like getting out of a chair. If we consent to the action, just as we consent to getting out of a chair, we will perform that action habitually. which we must learn to prevent by withholding consent. If we are stiffening and narrowing ourselves to place our hands on our student, this isn't simply an indication that we are tightening muscles and therefore need to direct once we make contact. It means that we have not taken time to consider how to perform the action in such a way that we circumvent our harmful habit. It means we are going ahead and doing, when instead we need to stop what we are doing and find a more intelligent means to our goal. To stick to a process that enables us to achieve the goal indirectly, so that we do not subconsciously trigger our habit. This is not difficult to put into practice if we are clear on the problem, but we do have to actually take the time to approach the situation deliberately and experimentally under controlled circumstances, so that we can put aside our idea of putting hands on and instead focus on the steps toward achieving that goal. In short, we've got to apply the means whereby principle. taking the time to put hands on in this experimental and exploratory way can be very useful for two reasons. First, by taking the time to inhibit our usual way of putting hands on a student, we become aware of the tendency to narrow across the shoulders and to overuse the biceps. Which gives us a corresponding and often quite dramatic release in the muscles. This helps us to get improvements that we ordinarily cannot get when we simply place our hands on a student in the usual way and give our directions. Second, getting this sort of release gives us a very different sense of how much widening is possible, which helps us to identify in a clear way what the problem is and what we need to learn in order to use our hands skillfully in teaching. No teaching can be complete or fundamentally sound if it involves tightening and narrowing of the inner arms and shoulders. When we see for ourselves how much we narrow and how much widening is possible, this helps us to understand the changes that need to happen in ourselves as the basis for using our hands skillfully in teaching. And here is an example how one can prepare oneself for guiding. Step 1, raising the arms from the elbows. One. Standing with feet slightly apart, think of lengthening your fingers to point to the ground and slowly rotate your arms so that your palms face forward. Two, give your directions and go into monkey, keeping your palms facing forward, continuing to direct to the fingertips and thumbs. Go through your directions again in monkey. Raise your lower arms at the elbow so that your palms facing upward and your hands are at elbow height or slightly below without involving the shoulders. The key here is not to involve the shoulders in any way, since the usual tendency when raising the arms, look now, is to tighten the biceps and to raise and tighten the shoulders. Once more, the job of the flexors. I'm going to put a little pause there, I'm going to prepare for a demonstration. So, we're going to make a demonstration here. And this will be the third time that...
in 2023.
Well, yeah, in 2023, with only 2 weeks in between. See what has happened. I think we need to move a bit forward. Because I don't know where here. If you move just, yes, that's good. Stand shoulder width apart, always shoulder width, yeah, perfect. I can notice it's looking better. Think that this is your point where the spine goes into the head and the skull goes up here, even here it goes down a bit, and it's just where that empty hole is under the ear. This looks like you can have a little drop on your nose ridge. Try to imagine a little drop, which I think is easier today because we were lucky to get a short drizzle. In the beginning is helpful sometimes to use things that you actually experience. But you need in the long run strengthen your imagination. It's never the same. This is an important part of the training, to really see the drip. The more you can see it, the more you get this unlocking tendency, which makes it possible for the second direction to come into action, which is the head can go up. So, first one is forward, think of the little drop. The second is up. And we usually think of a little smile here, which is like uppiness. Lakoff Johnson shows that all metaphors connected to happiness, they all go up. There is not a single one that is, I am so down and happy, or I feel enjoyment and going down, or being low, or anything. It simply doesn't exist. It is connected. you can transfer being down in that manner as to a disbalance here. And the two former actions and exercises we have done a lot. So the student, depicted here by my colleague, doesn't really have to do much other than think and use the, for instance, as suggested here by Dimon, the monkey, which we will perform today in another manner. And after these things has been established, we can then go into lengthening the spine, and that is in the horizontal direction. It can be thought of as the upward direction of the head, a sort of extension, bringing in also the back, and a widening here. So we have 4 directions, and it would be nice to add a 5th one here, that is getting out of the hips. One way to help that come true is to let the lock of the knees go for a second. Just for these few minutes we're going to take away the lock and think direction forward, forward, and then we're going to lower you a bit here. You can flex the knees a bit, yeah, a bit more, lower, lower, and we need to go that direction, opening the hips. You can sort of think that you are a cork that gets out of the bottle. The bottle is your hip, and this thing comes up, this whole area, which is your torso. Releasing your upper body from a falling down into the hip area, or the pelvis basin, which is all the way over here. What happens is we go down to the pelvis region because we are used to sitting in chairs, a highly unnatural act, and especially with the modern chairs. And just show you one of these horrible contraptions. This is killer for posture and the body. It's incredibly bad. There's no way of easy getting into a balanced posture. If you can't stand on them, you shouldn't sit in them. That's a good advice and a motto. You can't stand on them, don't sit on them. This is how we are constructed. I'm going to give you a little tilt here. Yes. What happens now is that whole back is following, and he is using his hip joint. Think of the knees in a direction forward over the middle toe, and also let the middle toe have a direction in that trajectory. And yeah, it's fantastic. This is absolutely fantastic. When the head is balanced on the atlanto-occipital joint, the head goes smoothly without any enforcement. It's a soft movement. Now look at the hands. This is the more problematic hand. Think a direction direction going that way and downwards. Put it on the chair like this. Continue to think about the drop. Very interesting this. Think about the drop, think about the smile up here. Think upwards. Put that. And oddly enough for this exercise, I will move the chair a bit forward so that his fingers will be extended like this. So, see if that can be shown in the video. Yes, it should. We will now encourage the student not to use his flexes, instead extending into the movement. Therefore, the monkey is a perfect start. It's a position of mechanical advantage. See, we can tilt you a little bit here in the joint. Can you feel the joint here?
Yes.
Yeah, you do move here now. You might have to put the chair a little bit forward. Okay. Take the hands a bit forward as well. Yeah, sure. That's very good. So direction going down here and outwards. Very good. And now his shoulder blades are coming away from each other automatically. And this is engaging the extension muscles. We mentioned that in the penultimate class when Ted Dimon called that using the hands as feet. So we encourage more widening. It's fantastic. It's very, very good. He is now lengthening all over the shoulder piece. Coming up, spiraling up, as Raymond Dart often called it. That there is a spiraling effect going all over the upper torso, releasing the upper torso, his torso from the hips, liberating them. This is connected to that when we sit a lot, we tend to never get out of that awkward and unnatural so-called chair position. The chair position is sunken into the hips. And we will now address the knees. So they will be encouraged to engage a little bit more. Now it's going to be a tougher monkey here. The lower you get, the tougher it is. That's enough, that's enough. So we still have that nice freedom here. And we'll also ask him to have a little drop, slowly drizzling over the ridge of the nose. That would be an indicator to have that infinitesimal small nod. And it is this nod, I'm going to exaggerate it here now, This nod that makes it possible for the head to go up, it releases, so to speak, the locking mechanism. It is almost like a real lock, and now I can still feel that head to be loose. Will not be as loose as in standing position, but this is a reconstruction exercise that will help Kalle to learn his body to use the extensors rather than the flexors. And this is the reason for that odd description of using the hands as feet. Because normally we so associate using the hands with flexing, not extending. So it seems unnatural, impossible for us. There is a big difference from last time. I will also show you the back, that it literally has become wider. You can see here, that's a widening happening here. If I were to have a ruler here, we can actually measure. It is measurable, it's not something imaginary. The more you train this, the more delightful will everyday life be. The actual exercise will not be delightful until much later. Because still, what will happen when you stand in this position is that your flexors, especially in your thighs and lower torso, will be engaged. That's inevitable. There is no perfect monkey. It is honing the structure until better and better and better. It will never reach its telos. It's constantly progressing. Actually, Alexander often mentioned that there is not such a thing as a correct position. It's either better or worse. But correctness does not go into the picture. It's an oversimplification to have correctness. I will liberate you from this by first taking your hands away. You can continue to have that direction. Very good, fantastic. So he's keeping the direction, and now the hands, because I move them, will point downwards. You can continue the direction downwards, yes. And now we will look at the other hand. Think of the direction going forward, bring it, and now it's pointing there, there. You see, it's pointing in different directions, depending on where the movement starts. You can now slowly get up monkey, and he's continuing the movement by itself. Now he's taller than he was before. He looks very tall. And it's very, very easy balance here. It's a bit like balancing an egg on a pencil. It's a very fragile balance, but once you achieve it, you will have more awareness around you. You will feel the rain clearer. It's a bit what happens in the afternoon when you get back from work. All sensory experience are dimmed out because you are tensed over here and your neck will not allow the head to move freely as here, and that would block out sensory experience. Then slowly during the night, once you go better into posture, you will regain awareness of what's happening outside of you. You will remember things and also feel your body more. proprioception, or the seventh sense, the kinesthetic sense. So this is also an opening up into kinesthesia. And we just try something extra. You can move freely, you can go around maybe the chair, and we will have you sit down here. But move around first, freely, somewhere. You can stand yourself in front of the chair, like that, yeah, perfect. Continue to have that very, very nice balance in the head. This is what later you will be able to keep, even if you're working on, how can I say it, more tricky situation like working in front of a computer, where habits are immensely much stronger. Because here there is nothing for him to focus on. There's nothing interesting that can draw him from his balance, like something to watch, something to read, something to listen to or talk to. Talking always brings out bad habits, listening and talking. So that's why doing the monkey and the hands-on is, with the student in the beginning, not engaging in something complicated. Could be singing, if the student is a singer, or acting, or reciting, as was the case in Alexander's own case. He did not recite in the beginning. But once the habit is established, you can bring it to a more tricky situation. This is fantastic. It's just the third time and it's already this much better. Therefore I will tempt possibilities and see if we can sit him down here. I have a bit of problem with the logistics here. I can manage. So we're going to do a half monkey. You just flex your knees, yes, and then you tilt your hip, yes, you know, move the movement down. Continue to flex your knees, and then I keep it, you can go down, yes, that's perfect. So he's still in his whole full back. And now we're going up, you can, yes, very good, very good. That's perfect. Keep that balance. Huge success. This, we remember, was tried 2-3 years ago. And now it was much easier. I tempt my possibilities, but it did work. I'm really happy. I think this success will terminate this episode. Thank you very much, and thank you, Kalle, for helping with this. Congratulations to the success. Have a very nice day. Bye bye for now.